Greetings to everyone who is joining us this morning in this installment of our webinar series with a specific focus this morning as a follow-up to our webinar that took place on the 26th of June on the unauthorized, irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, which is a topic that generated quite a lot of interest. It's not often that we will have part two of any of our webinars since we have started. My name is Zolani and the surname is Zonyane. I'm the chief editor and the moderator at the Municipal Edge, working closely with Dan Claassen from Future Cities Africa, who are our hosts this morning. And thanks, Dan, for your dedication to these webinars. Without you, we won't be in a position where we are. Let me welcome also our panelists, starting with our lead presenter, JP Rossouw from George Municipality. We've got our team from Midvaal, Anton, the MM at Midvaal. We also have Councillor Lehloka, who's the MPAC chairperson. We also have in our midst Councillor Mbele, I think, yes, who is with the city of Matlosana local municipality, the MPAC member. And within our panelists, we've got Melissa van Niekerk, director from Western Cape Provincial Treasury. We've got Kgabo Moloto, a director in Gauteng Provincial Treasury. We've got Skhumbuzo Mgobhozi with CoGTA within the municipal finance team. Also, we've got Opelo, who is with Mahikeng local municipality. And again, to our audience, welcome. As we normally do, the chat box is open for your comments. We've got the question and answer option as well. You've been an engaging audience, and we appreciate you for that. As we normally do, introduce yourself, the institution you are coming from, and possibly the role that you hold in that institution. It also assists as we engage throughout our webinars. And also, it will be important to acknowledge before we start and also mention for the benefit of all of us that the topics that we choose to have conversations around are in support of the broader programs by National Treasury. We've hosted them in a couple of webinars. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, we are trying as this body of knowledge as we have positioned ourselves, and also trying to share the experiences, the best practices. The work that we do complements the work that is delivered by those stakeholders, even including the South African Local Government Association, your Chartered Institute of Government, Finance, Audit and Risk Officers. We've got your Chartered Institute, which is CRGOL, the Southern African Chapter. So all the work or the conversations that we curate, it is to best look at how do we support the initiatives within the local government space, but more to improve the current situation, because we complain often about dysfunctional municipalities, municipalities who can't deliver services, financial management. That is not really on par in terms of where it should be. Through this platform that we've created is let's bring together I'll say those with expertise within the sector to share their knowledge, to share the experience, and even provide advice where advice is required by other municipalities. Without really wasting more time, I will allow JP, who will then just be breaking the ice for us in setting the scene on our conversation this morning. really with a key focus on the functionality of the key governance structures within this big animal, as I referred to in the previous webinar of UIF&W expenditure in terms of the municipal public accounts committees, their functionality and support in addressing the UIF&W expenditure. What is done better or best somewhere in the country, which then other municipalities can draw from. Similarly with the disciplinary boards, and I'm glad Skhumbuzo, my brother, you joined us, because in terms of the insights that you provided in our previous webinar, it also led to us in really deciding on this part two and narrowing this conversation to those two areas. As I hand over to you, JP, it's also important to recognize the fact that this part two was also made possible by SALGA Gauteng. Normally, I would have post briefing sessions with some of the participants. As I engaged with my colleague from SALGA GP, Usandile, as part of our conversation, it was, we cannot leave the issue on UIF&W expenditure from where we left it in June. Let's rather have this follow-up session so that we can delve deeper on these two areas. Thanks once more to SALGA and for the partnerships, as I've indicated, that we continue to engage in trying to really turn the tide in our local government. To other panelists who have joined us, welcome. I will then, as I hand over to you, also allow just briefly to introduce yourself. JP, let me hand over to you, my brother. You can take us through your presentation.
I'm not going to do a detailed presentation as we've discussed in going forward. So what I'm going to do is, there's not a slideshow or a lecture or presentation in such. It's more of, when I prepared for part two, it's more about snippets so we can see how we can go and drill down in some of these areas. So as you said, there was part one. We unpacked various elements regarding our friend, the UIF&W. And that discussion necessitated further discussions, specifically surrounding the role of the MPACs and our financial DBs board within their role of UIF&W. So therefore, the need for part three on 31 July today. So for my side, I think as a lead to the panel itself, because I'm not the specialist or the panel around us, I'm more facilitating the process from this side, is want to try and unpack it further with more insights and see how we can come up with workable solutions. This is probably with your support as program director to be as interactive as possible so that we can have a lessons sharing panel. We have one of the best municipalities, the accounting officers in the room. So let's step on that knowledge. I had a very good opportunity to actually engage his mind on various other matters. So I think let's all take this opportunity to use it. I think it's for free, Anton. I'm not sure. Maybe they'll be well off to it. But I think there's progress to throwing. Also welcome to the other various team senior panelists that will be introducing themselves as we go along with the panel discussion. But for me, Zolani, I think the whole thing of unauthorized irregular influence or spend should be sort of compartmentalized because they're not the same thing. They are thrown under one basket, but however it means totally different things. The bad one, I would think, is the fruitless innovation, where I would really want to give maybe someone hiding. But the other two, there's normally in some instances reasoning as to why it happens, and it's more down to interpretation of how we deal with our accounting standards and the legislation and law. But from my side, I think that this needs a collective attention, a joint effort in trying to identify how and can do it. As I said, I did not do a lot of presentation work. What I did was snip it all night and just snip. So just snip it of each and everything that I think is important to set the scene before we move into the discussion in terms of that. I know our key focus will be on building on part one's foundation and see how can we empower and ensure that our impacts are functioning and the financial discipline board is functioning. And there's this notion there's always overlap in those responsibilities between MPAC doing one thing, the audit committee doing one thing, now the financial municipal board also do one thing, and this is not a duplication of effort in terms of this. But okay, let's take a quick deep dive into some of the practicality of the matters. I'm not going to go into detail of my bio, but Jean-Pierre Rossouw, I'm the Chief Audit Executive of George Municipality. I'm also chairperson of the Western Cape Municipal Forum, and I'm also currently serving as a non-executive director at the Institute of Internal Auditors. I worked for a while in George, acting chief risk officer, acting as or chief CEO, and I had the privilege of working at Zolani for a while with Groenewald there. In terms of qualifications, I have a master's degree in internal audit. I have some public sector experience in terms of that. I dabbled into forensics. I dabbled into the risk as well. So I think just to set the scene that we know who we're talking to in terms of this. Although I didn't want to make it very legislative, I'm going to skip the slide very briefly. The CSL legislative framework, we work under MSA and all of those kind of legislation. So information being all in terms of our discussion today, it allows certain responsibilities to the accounting officer to ensure that there are steps taken to ensure that those expenditures are prevented, and we can dive a bit into what are those areas that the accounting officer needs to do. And then section 32 deals with if it picks up, how we're gonna sort of deal with it in terms of council-wise, where we're gonna recover, write-off, and how we do it on the accounting treatment side in disclosing it in our end of financial statements. Further that, National Treasury found it best to maybe broaden the scope of 171 in terms of the financial misconduct flowing from the MFMA. Regulations were financial misconduct regulations was published in 2014, which is effective now. It's also one of the discussions in terms of what they need to do, and very importantly is the Structures Act, which then allowed for the establishment of the MPAC. Some municipalities had different approaches in dealing with Section 32 issues, but now the law requires that MPAC be mandated to have certain powers in terms of that. So I think the question is how we sort of capacitate and deal with those kind of matters in a good way. I took this snippet from the Auditor General's presentation they recently did at the Governance Audit Seminar, and I think before we delve even into anything, is that we need to understand where we fit in. The roles and responsibilities needs to be understood by all parties, and I think this diagram or depiction is a perfect depiction of how the accountability ecosystem works. For example, you have on your left-hand side here, the officials who make decisions, you have senior managers that guides them. Then you have an MMO accounting officer making the decision, being the link between the administrative side and the political side, as well as support from the audit committee and internal audit. So these are structures that can assist the accounting officer in his duty to ensure how am I going to prevent irregular expenditure, so forth. Then you have the other side of it, the more nicer side, if you can put it like that. With all the leadership councillors, you have your mayor, your speaker, your full council, and very importantly, what we're speaking about now is the Public Accounts Committee in their role. It's a 79 committee, which is a committee that reports directly to council. Council elects those members. So there's a whole lot of issues on our side, which is in our control, in a way that we can influence, ensure that we're done. And on the other side, we have the sort of the support and overstructure and the guys that make the laws, your parliament, provincial parliaments, also the premiers, your PTs, your CoGTAs, your legislators, and so forth. So all of them have an approach in insight, influence, enforcement to enhance active citizenry, as we all know that we are in the business of service delivery. So I think we all need to work to a common goal. And as soon as each and every one understands his role and responsibilities within the system, I think it will lead to better results in terms of where we're sitting with the numbers of unauthorized expenditure. This is another snippet, something that National Treasury provided to NDMs. So NDMs meaning there's non-delegated municipalities, solo metros and a few bigger municipalities where our George is also a non-delegated municipality. So report directly to NT. It's the assessment that they provided post the AG audit of 22-23. And in this balance, just quickly, Zolani and colleagues, just to highlight the balances over the 3 years. We're sitting at 95 billion at the end of June 2023 as a balance of UIF&W. Although the balance have increased from 1.3 from the prior years, but it can also now, the decrease can also be assisted with write-offs and unidentified and recovery and so forth over the years. The reason I quote the balances first is in the last 3 years, they've analyzed what was incurred, meaning it was incurred during that specific year when the auditors found. And if you look at the 22-23 financial year, UIF&W expenditure incurred is at 14 million. If I just go back to the previous slide, which is the balance of it, indicating 95 million. We've incurred in the 3 years more, 14. So what is going to happen to the balance of that? How are we going to recover that? How are we going to not clean our books, but how are we going to hold people accountable in terms of whether we have received value for money, we have not wasted any funding, comfortable write it off, or there's mass spending in vain and we need to recover. And that's MPAC's role in terms of this, making a recommendation to council. They had a nice slide at the end which says that at 30 June, all the non-delegated municipalities has a balance of 95 UIF&W. And this is only focusing on the non-delegated municipalities. The picture could have been lost a lot worse, but is a lot worse if you take into account the Auditor General's statement that's released over the 257 municipalities in general. I just had access to the information, so it's public information, so I just thought that to set the scene, we need to know where we are. 5% of this relates to fruits and vegetable. It is still a high amount, and then 76 of it is regular expenditure. And regular expenditure can mean anything. It can mean that I forgot to sign something on a paper that I've missed, to really missing something in my budget adjudication committee, or awarding a bid that is invalid. So it varies a lot now. The term irregular, for me, Zolani and team, always is something that needs to be balanced when you throw the term irregular around, especially in the public sector and public arena. You can't say there's 73 billion irregular. It seems that the money is gone. And for me, that the streets are there, we're driving the cars, whatever the case may be, we're doing service delivery. So I think there should be awareness and more key approach in terms of educating our staff, and before throwing these kind of words out there, UIF&W, let them understand and educate them in terms of what does it mean to do that. I'm going to skip this one. This one is only the UIF&W picture at year end, what was incurred, the 14 million, what was written off, 15, and what was approved for recovery. As I said, was adopted from the NT slides that they presented to the NDMs after the assessment. They are just maybe to say, 12 top contributors at 30 June. Yeah, I'm going to detail of the municipalities. I see from the world is looking there. If Midvaal is on the list. Yeah. But in essence, before I go into it, I think I would better about 10 minutes into it now. When the AG do the audit, they have a UIF&W stage. They can either qualify you, which is the accounting treatment of it, which means that you can't determine how much UIF&W have. So they say no, we can't we can't conclude that the million that you disclose is the million that's actually UIF&W, and then they qualify your Fs. Then you must go back and quantify what happened, and even have a new old thing now saying it must be disclosed backdated from the inception of it, which I don't agree with, but I'm not here for that. And they say to address this, that we need to record every year, at least on a monthly basis, as and when irregular expenditure incurred, recorded. I always had a question: where's the authority to say it's irregular or not? Is the is the AG alone? Oh, but we can debate that as we go along. The other one is the expenditure part of it. How are we gonna? What steps were not taken to prevent that this expenditure occurred? So it means there's where internal audit, your risk management can assist in terms of how do we review and strengthen our controls, when payouts are made, when awards are made, and what are the causes of these kind of expenditure to sort of prevent it. But now for the business of the day is consequence management and accountability. So we agree not all UIF&W financial misconducts are instituted or disciplinary measures sort of taken against them. And the recommendation from NT is that if there's those elements, we should sort of address it, reported to impact the DC financial misconduct steps. There's a lot of processes now, a lot of guidance available. And there's amazing amazing work with regards to plotting the financial misconduct sort of process. If this happens, that should happen. I think those charts should sit in a legal advisor, the auditor, or even the MM's office on how to deal with those matters. I'm concluding now before I go into George. It seems that the municipalities are over-eager or under-eager to sort of launch investigations for UIF&W, which is either yay or nay. The reporting requirements are not always adhered to. We have dysfunctioning DC boards, not understanding their role and stuff, lack of disciplinary actions, and so forth. But I think I can share this right afterwards, slides for people to have a look at, but these are publicly available information I just put together to set the scene. Lastly, my friend is that for the general, they depicted in their session they had when they did the 20 results of the pre-financial year. They have highlighted a few issues, highlighted a few stickiness in terms of them, indicating with regards to expenditure, top 5 non-compliance expenditure management, procurement contract management, again, and unauthorized commercial expenditure. They focus on irregular expenditure on those side in terms of what we need to do or what we've done to get irregular expenditure incurred and how do we close out the balance. They have insights in the root causes, why it's happening, indicate poor planning, lack of compliance, lack of proactive review for the audits, slow response from implementing the plan, vacancies in key positions such as supply chain or finance, and lack of consequence management or the willingness to implement consequence management. What they say you can do is the way forward, that the accounting officers should ensure that prepared procurement plans are responsive to environment that operates. I know there's a drive towards cash flow plans, having the spending, having capital plan in place, ensure that we are not rushed when we do our specs and awards and so forth. That we go through a proper probity process, and as well implementing monitoring controls, implement the action plan, ensure that our, especially our ACM units, are adequately resourced in terms of key positions. And I'm just, for all the attendees and all the M's, just want to ensure that internal audit should also be adequately resourced, because then internal audit can perform probity audits on the high risk ACM tenders and expenditures. And the consequences, they say, about the irregular expenditure is that MPAC through the DB and internal audit should expedite these investigation processes, sort of to implement it timeously. That's it. That's irregular expenditure. I'm going to conclude now. They also touch on unauthorized expenditure. in indicating that unauthorized and fruitless is the worst thing that can happen. It's mainly like, for example, due to late payments or payments made in vain where no value were made, double payments, those kind of issues. Overspending is more accounting issue for me in terms of if it's really a thing, it's when you overspend your budget, but it can be corrected through adjustment budget if it's a valid and legal expense. But the impact of all of these issues can be that these funds can be earmarked for basic service delivery, and that's why we and it can result in delays and so forth in rolling out our projects and so forth. And even the unauthorized expenditure also burdens our already constrained financial health. They will also delay. So the impact is high. I must indicate from my side in terms of both these elements. I'm not going to go through their recommendations. This is free nuggets, free information. I'm not going to charge anything or bill you. They indicated they've indicated some insights and the root causes for unauthorized expenditure. It begins with planning as well, unauthorized. And when you do your IDP in your budgets and so forth, and how you do effective publication to ensure that you have a realistic funded budget before you commence your financial year. It's about budgeting and accounting in terms of that. With fruitless, I think it's a control issue. There needs to be sufficient control monitoring in place to ensure that payments are done within 30 days, so forth, so forth. If not, reasons being provided as to why it being paid, and when there's sort of negligence, it should be dealt with necessary processes. There's a way forward. We need to be transparent. We track about it monthly, 671. There's all the things we do, but they say much as in our arts and strengthen it, ensure that the units are adequately positioned. Again, the last one from the AG, my friends, is that a call to action. They call to action accounting officer to sort of putting the controls in place, invest in the controls to ensure that we prevent UIF&W. But if we can't, we have our council and MPAC. We can discuss about it now. We'll stop at now, of course, Zolani, so we can have sufficient discussion to go through it. So they're still in culture of good governance and then act. And the MPAC should do the job initially in terms of recommending or recovering, and council should act on it accordingly. And then CoGTA is always there to support the provincial department, national departments that can assist in order to how we can do it in terms of that. Especially the treasuries, all treasuries are very excellent. I live in a very privileged situation where our provincial treasury is very honored in terms of that. And I see all provincial treasuries are monitoring and honored from this. Now, with all those nuggets and snippets, it's free information. You can go back and you can go right to your whole new policies and stuff on UIF&W and how you're going to deal with it, what you should do and not do, train people, put out awareness notes and everything. The info is there. I just did one Google search and everything popped up. So if you really want, you can actually do it. But the thing is, I was asked to provide context of it and then just discuss some of George's trends and hand over and give back to touch on the role of MPAC and the financial board, and my learned colleagues will do the rest with my support as well. So as you can see in the graph, George had a very solid is a word in terms of budget. Okay, in terms of expenditure, UIF&W expenditure under 100 million. In 2018-19, something bad happened. And I mustn't blame my friends. Our external auditors had a different view of how we interpreted the supply chain issue when we do our specs and before we do a bid evaluation. Now, for all the years from 13, 14 was fine. 18, 19, bam, they said no, it's not fine anymore. And we had to disclose it retrospectively. As you can see, it was over 600 million rand that we disclosed as After that, we've agreed, okay, we can agree with you. And then we go along and then it's done. For the 22-23 financial year, we had no unauthorized expenditures, 173,000 in irregular expenditure and 72,900 in fruitless. But this is something that's showing from prior year as well. It's a specific incident that we're dealing with. But there is sort of hope if you use the nuggets in the beginning, and you can use the nuggets that we're going to share now. I think you'll be fine in terms of that. But when you look at it, you need to look at why this happens. So the first thing I think is governance. You need to have a fully structured or stable governance in place that sets the team. I mean governance, and in the council and all its committees. Management team needs to be in place. From my side, yesterday I rated this as partial because we have some few top critical vacancies available, but hopefully we'll be able to fill them soon. But if there is a stable council and a stable management team in place, those are the two main governance issues that would drive and support the consequence management process going through the financial board and to the and to the MPAC as well. Audit committees are key. They can also drive and ask questions and to ask what's happening. So, if a strong audit committee in place, they can also encourage how we can sort of do the consequence and what's happening here, what's happening there. Audit function definitely for strong CAE. You can have someone that probes it and asks, when are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with this? Do you need assistance? Has MPAC's agenda been set yet? And so forth and so forth. There's a new thing that AG also now utilizes. They got a lot of teeth now, is MI, and it's a material irregularity where the accounting officer, if there's none sort of consequences, they can actually be charged in his own capacity, but there's a process to issue that certificate, but I'm not going to talk about that. Strategy is key, I think, from that is to understand that the needs of the community is there, not overpromise, but you can't deliver it, and that sometimes leads to other issues like unrest or unauthorized expenditure. Risks, I think risk department is for a long time behind the scenes. I think we need to step forward. They are the ones that can drive this process in terms of identifying root causes through emerging risk and through risk that actually materialize, as well as within other municipalities and within the province, within the country, and globally as well. I think time is gone where we need to think solely on George. We need to now, or on your own municipality, we need to go a bit wider. You want to do risk assessments. Again, ethical culture, I think you need to promote strong ethics. I think that's a given. We need to comply with regulations, that's a given. There's monitoring systems are given. So we have some governance instructions that we identified are key to ensure that we run our finances correctly, and these are some of those areas. Then we went to go about and say, okay, we're focusing now specifically on unauthorized and irregular expenditures. So we have each year with our budget, we all the budgetary policies, cash management, supplies, and whatever, we have the one on the unauthorized irregular influence and wasteful expenditure. And this basically deals just with the framework, the responsibilities, principles, what is it, defining it, how they recover it, and those kind of issues. The role of the committees, how are the disciplinary actions taking place, recovery, and so forth. It is on the website if you want to have a score or read on it, but I'm just fighting it here. As I said, this is the presentation, it's a snippation. Then as our annexes as well, we have an annexure of, I think for me, as auditor, record keeping is key. Without records, we are unable to express any opinion. So we have an NHI, and these are all information that we pulled from, we didn't reinvent the wheel. National Treasury is key in terms of providing guidance in terms of this. And there is a framework available as a circular on the website. Well, I have a lot of circulars on consequence management, UIF&W, and so forth. But we have a register and we keep it year by year. Internal audit, forensics department, the risk department, legal department, and finance also provides input into these matters. And then also NHB is how do we deal with the process up until reporting it to the relevant parties. Then after that is we have a reduction strategy. Now, in this strategy, similar to the policy, we just identify whose role is what's role is NT, PD, other officials, MPAC, council, internal audit committee, and so forth. But I must say, 11 and 12 of this document, I think, is the most important document. I'm not going to go into any detail, but we've split the thing into 4 parts. The first part is we need to improve the environment, preventative controls. So we have identified certain controls that need to be in place, what action should be in place, timeline, and the owner of it. Simple stuff. Let everyone sign on code of conduct for the issues. Take over minimum competency and complete it. And there's another block here where internal audit comes in when we do this reviews of UIF&W to see whether these are happening or not. So it's almost like a roadmap we're having in terms of that. So that's just one, this preventative controls. So the audit that we do in okay, the stuff in I'm not sure if you can see properly, but it's snip and dump first. Let's call it snippet. Then I went further with everything is listed in detail, who needs to do it, by when must it be done, and how we're going to do it. And this is something you can't do once, so this is something you need to do every year. Remember, the audit does not begin after year end, 1 July, and then you start preparing your financial statements for submission 30 August. Your audit begins right throughout the year. So our audit for next year, 24-25, has started. So we need to have now our procurement plans in place, specs must be in place, we must do everything. These audits must be there and so forth. I'm not going to go each of every one of these requirements, but there's a detailed action plan is how we deal with it. We split it into 4 parts. One is the preventive part from a control perspective, 2 also preventative from SCM and contract management perspective. 3 is the consequence management. There must be consequences in place in terms of that. And then 4 and 5, which is very important, is how do we deal with it in terms of when there's successful recovery, is going to be added to the debt list and all those kind of issues in terms of that. I'm not going into too much detail with regards to that. And then, this is bad. And then we have identified some targets as to where we want to be 2023-24. It's also part of the plan. It's reviewed on an annual basis and see how we can get from the baseline to incrementally reduce our UIF&W. That's a nutshell. Zolani, I've given some nuggets which is publicly available from the NT and the AG, identifying what to do, what can you do, how you can do it. It's all about these words mean nothing if you don't put it into a plan. So taking these nuggets and put it into a plan, have an accountable person, and monitoring it is for me key. Touching on the role of MPAC, we know that UIF&W exists, eating colors, we have a backlog in terms of that. We have in terms of reference for our, I think it covers the legislation structures here that gives them the power now, what the purpose is, 79, what the expectations is, they must provide council with oversight, the authority, but very importantly, the focus on point 6, the roles and responsibilities of MPAC. It says that 6.2 is that MPAC fulfills the role of the council committee in terms of section 32 or the MFMA dealing with UIF&W. And if you need to now go back to the MFMA and say what does section 32 means, it just speaks about that, is how it's being treated. Now, the MPAC is it says the council, when the UIF&W council, a council committee must investigate this. And in this case, the Structures Act now provided the power to MPAC to be that the 2 committee to see how. So they need to investigate in terms of whether we have received value for money, whether there's any losses occurred, prejudice, whatever the case will be. Is a nice checklist you can use when you present items to MPAC in terms of it. But I think for me, MPAC needs to be empowered and needs to understand what these elements mean. And when you present the recommendation to either write off or recover should be in good faith in terms of the facts presented to you. That's the main part of this discussion. But in any case, MPAC can also review the agency report. They must review the agency reports. They must review internal audit reports and do the oversight and council oversight over the end report, which was the main objective in the past for MPAC. But they have some bit more detail. I think we should utilize our MPACs and support them in trying to get all of these matters cleared. Maybe some work. What we did now, MPAC did is we've done a review of our terms of reference, Chair, and we've compared it to SALGA's proposed terms of reference. And some of those areas are we could not or it's difficult to implement. So what we've done is we've done a comparative analysis in what is on our terms of reference and what does SALGA require a terms of reference to look like. And we've got reference, we check yes, no, and we made a nice one in terms of how we're going to go forward in terms of that. We have quarterly meetings of MPAC, standing quarterly meetings, at least 4 times a year, but also a lot of special meetings, especially when we deal with UIF&W. We have the 13th of August, trying to push the UIF&W through in terms of our financial statements, but also a lot of special meetings when we do the oversight process on the annual report. So our work plan has to be adjusted to include those requirements of the Structures Act. Successfully conclude the oversight report. We considered the UIF&W in terms of 32. Some is not enough, some is being referred back. So I think we're very strong MPAC in terms of that, and they reviewed our reports. Things I think we need to go focus on the way forward. The MPAC need to fulfill the role of the two committee without fear and favor. MPAC to review AG internal report. They can make recommendations to council in terms of that as well. NTC, there's a when you do an item to council for MPAC to assess and also assist with training, there's a sort of a guideline that they can use for. You can provide a document of the matter, what is legal application, what is the type of UIF&W, and they define that specific type, if where it's unauthorized, irregular, or fruitless. What are discussions against that led to them, who are involved, was there value for money, no money lost, just that didn't forget to sign or something like that, or a must interpretation. What we're going to do to mitigate controls, confirm that the report is correct and provide the supporting evidence. Is there any measures taken to recover so that MPAC can make informed decision when they do recommend to council, whether to sort of to refer to further investigation, refer to council to write off, or even make a recommendation to refer this to the Financial Misconduct Disciplinary Board and say that maybe there's financial misconduct, so they can do a prelim to determine if there's any grounds. So I think MPAC needs to be empowered in terms of that. And these are guides. They have a charter approved by council, so we have the mandate. Actually, don't need a charter because the legislation was the mandate to you, but it's good to have a charter in terms of what those responsibilities you have, and then have minimum requirements when the reports are tabled to council. At least or to MPAC, each considers these matters before MPAC makes a ruling or decision or recommendation to council for consideration. Just on financial
JP, as you step into this slide, let's probably work towards, I'll say, wrapping up briefly so that we can have enough time with our panelists as well.
Okay, give me a minute. If in financial misconduct board, that's a different thing. It flows from the financial misconduct reporting regulations. Each municipality must have one. Each municipality must have terms of reference for this, and there's processes when reporting to council, reporting back, and so forth. This is just a snapshot in terms of the status of the DCs at 31 December and in the under the non-delegated municipalities. The number 7 established, 10 not established, 6 functional, 11 functional, 7 approved terms of reference place, 10 approved. So we can just have a look at that as well. And I think this is just something, a slide we can take note of as to what the way forward might be. And then I'm happy to end, Zolani, and you can take the chair further and guide the questions that needs to be asked. And so for the hope that chat is seeing where we are, and we can take it further from that. Thank you, Zolani.
No, thanks a lot, JP. Much appreciated. And you've really provided an overview, not only as it relates to George, but the basics of dealing with this headache that we have as a country. It will be amiss if I don't welcome Wayne, whom, when I started to really learn about this UIF&W expenditure, it was when Wayne and team at National Treasury really took that initiative of not only raising awareness, but also providing support to various treasuries, to municipalities as well. Welcome, Wayne, and your comments are much appreciated. And as I get to you, from Midvaal, specifically on the point that Wayne is raising in the comments, that what is it that Midvaal is doing probably correctly? And maybe let me go to that comment so that I can read it in context. And as you also deal with it, you can also touch on that. Wayne says dysfunctional MPACs and disabled is our biggest risk to tangible reduction in UIF&W expenditure. NT, working with our strategic partners, DCOG and SALGA, provided extensive support to enhance the functionality of these two key structures over the last 10 years. The functionality of these two structures is largely dependent on the cooperation of the administration under the leadership of the accounting officer. That's where then Wayne requires you. It was also going to be my question, if you recall our earlier conversation, to say, from Midvaal to get things right, as the chief administrator responsible for the running of the municipality, how have you gotten it right in terms of these two critical structures? Firstly, from the side of support, because there is a need of technical support, but also, as I indicated earlier, we somehow expect, and I'll narrow it to MPAC. We expect MPAC to be functional, but we don't report to MPAC. It's a scenario in some of the municipalities. How have you dealt with such as Midvaal local municipality?
Thank you very much, Zolani. I wanted to say with JP presenting, I could have excused myself and actually got some work done, but thanks for the question nonetheless. I do want to acknowledge Wayne McComb as well. We do spend quite a bit of time up here in Gauteng with both Provincial and National Treasury. And then I also do want to acknowledge one of the few people who had the misfortune to mentor me. I see Mr. Arendse is in the room from Provincial Treasury. He's supposed to be retired. Clearly, his wife is not keeping him busy enough. But respect to Mr. Arendse, when I was a junior coming through, he was one of the few people who took the time to engage with me. So I just want to acknowledge. I can't see any of the other acknowledged people I can acknowledge, but thanks for the opportunity. I do want to say that the MPAC and the FDB is part of a suite of organizations or committees or oversight structures. If you have a weak internal audit, you're going to have a weak MPAC and a weak financial disciplinary board. If you have a weak chief audit executive, you're going to have a weak APAC and MPAC and FDB. So the internal audit, whether it is an internally structured institution, we are busy switching from an external source to an internal chief audit executive, internal audit unit. We've just appointed our newest chief audit executive, and we're in the process of putting that structure in place and appointing staff in order to take over the external from the external service provider. The policies and the stuff that JP has touched on are all things which we all have access to, and I think the issue is the intent and extent to which those policies and processes that is covered is adopted as a way of working. It's not a policy you refer to on occasion. It must be ingrained in the DNA of your leadership. You can't refer to ethical behavior every 6 months when you sit in a committee meeting. It must form part of the way in which you engage. It must be the basis on which you are operating your institution on a daily basis, to have the right moral compass, to have the intention to do good, to serve, provide service delivery, and so forth. And obviously to put in place the necessary control environments to discourage any individuals who may be otherwise intended. So in our instance, in both the case of the MPAC and the FDB, we have senior members of the institution that sit on those. Obviously, I refer matters to MPAC and to APAC as the accounting officer. Matters that are brought to my attention. We have a fraud hotline. We have a forensic investigative capacity, and all matters that we believe or require further investigation are then referred to both MPAC and the Financial Disciplinary Board. Just interestingly, I wanted to reflect that over the last 3 years, our total UIF&W against a budget of 1.8, 1.9 billion per annum has been 4.4 million over the last 3 years. I think negligible is the word that comes to mind, almost insignificant. But again, that's because of the tight control environment and the fact that we double check, triple check all of the necessary systems and processes. So in terms of capacity, the Executive Director Corporate Services, the Chief Audit Executive, the Director Legal Services from the institution provides the necessary administrative support, obviously, as well as the committee services. So minutes are taken, all of the necessary capacity is provided. If MPAC requires further investigation or information is required, we allow either our forensic investigators or external auditors to present to them, if necessary, to address any concerns. And we do the same with the Financial Disciplinary Board. They are given access to all of the documentation, and they are allowed to call individuals to come and account or present. Obviously, this is where my one concern is, and I will touch on that, is where disciplinary processes cannot be scuppered because of the investigative processes that are related to whether or not somebody has done something deliberately, and I do want to touch on that in a minute. So the MPAC and the FDB in our case is substantially resourced, and it must be with the right caliber of individual. And I think that's the one thing that JP also touched on, and that is that the quality of the individuals. And when I say quality, I don't just mean qualification. I mean that you must have the necessary experience, you must have the necessary understanding of processes, and you must have a working knowledge on how to deal with these matters. I find, and I'm going to say so probably at the risk of offending people, there are lots of institutions that simply tick the box, and that's an easy exercise. It's easy to draft a policy. JP has just demonstrated. You can download it from NT. You can just, cut and paste your municipality's name. But that's not going to make the difference. The difference lies in the quality of the individuals that are appointed or elected to carry out these functions, who do so without fear of favor and who implement it without any regard for who the individuals may or may not be. Many of the challenges that we face in our country are not legislative. They are people-based. They are institutions driven by individuals who have as their intent the desire to defraud, corrupt, acquire by means other than hard work the material benefits that comes with it. And so the stuff we are seeing, the irregular expenditure, the fraud, the corruption, it's driven by personal intent. And unless you have an institution that has enough people of integrity, enough people with experience to be able to deal with these matters expeditiously, it's going to be a lost battle. It is a tragedy that just over 40, I think 44 municipalities are not dysfunctional or distressed, if I refer to the last NT report. So for me, Chairperson is not just MPAC and FDB, it's the APAC that sits around it. It's the quality of the internal audit function. It's also the extent to which council allows the MPAC to operate and to provide the necessary support, and in order to be able to make the necessary recommendations. I do want to say our MPAC has got 4 compulsory engagements here. That's to review the financial statements from September after they submitted to the auditor. In December, they review the AG's report, which is normally received on the 30th of November. That's the second compulsory one. The third compulsory one is in January, when the annual report and the AFs are then submitted for public comment. And then they meet 30th of March or in the March cycle to assess and review whether there have been any public comments. So we've got 4 MPACs, and then we have special impacts depending on matters as they arise, and those are inevitably related to either incidents or questions where investigations have yielded that there may be a UIF&W matter. Midvaal recently won a number of awards, 6 awards, not just best overall municipality. Sadly, the Western Cape wishes they could compete with Midvaal. I can't resist the chirp because I'm obviously from that area. We won an award for best records, and to JP's earlier point, if you don't have records, you can't retrospectively go through the documentation to establish where the incident or accident or matter occurred. We've also won best award for implementation of financial misconduct and consequence management. This was recently in July when we received these awards. And again, it's because of the thorough approach that we have, the detailed assessments and investigations that we do conduct. I just want to make 3 quick points because I do want to address it. I do worry that all of these processes are still punitive in nature. They're not corrective. Everyone forgets actually that an internal audit function is also supposed to make suggestions on corrective actions and or remedial actions to address the matter before it is reported. It's not a felony. I find it's still one of those elements that people are reluctant to undertake, to say, but actually, if you uncover something, if there is no malice and there is no fraud or corruption and there's an error, you can make corrective or remedial actions. And I don't think I hear enough of those in these discussions. The second element I wanted to raise was Section 32 does not provide thresholds. It simply says if the person acted negligently, incompetently, or deliberately. There's no threshold in the regulations that specifies to what extent must I be incompetent, to what extent must I be negligent to be found guilty and to be able to establish whether or not recovery actions are justified. And then I think the last point from my side before I ask Councillor Lehloka to give his perspective is that the regulations, as JP also pointed out, we need to disaggregate the definitions of UIF&W because they have very different consequences. And irregular expenditure can be made regular if it's verified that value for money was received, even if the service provider was incorrectly appointed or inappropriately appointed, and so on and so forth. There are, for some of these elements, I think they're overstated, and in the public eye, it seems like there's wanton disregard for rules and regulations, and it creates the incorrect perception. And I do also want to say, JP indicated that the true criminal is fruitless and wasteful, and he would like to see more people taken to task for that. I do want to point out to him that if a municipality receives a fine from another state entity, it's also classified as fruitless. So and the most common one in recent times obviously is fines issued for non-compliant landfill sites, where environmental departments, provincial environmental departments are going around issuing instructions to close. If you fail to close, you're issued with anywhere between a 1 to 5 million rand fine. Now, fines are generally regarded as fruitless and wasteful expenditure because it's non-compliance with laws and regulations. The last comment from me is that there are always mitigating and extenuating circumstances. And I do worry that, and maybe I say this as an accounting officer because it's my skin at risk, is that there is a culture that has beginning to gather momentum that says, we must be more punitive against the accounting officers. And I can assure you that you're going to do nothing but discourage more accounting officers from actually wanting to continue to do this work. And I do hope, and again, in the absence of regulation or legislation that provides context for some of these transgressions, that is the space where I think the punitive and the nature of the action that is related to that runs the risk of not taking into account extenuating and or mitigating circumstances. I want to ask Councillor Lehloka from his side what his experience has been with our MPAC. I do have a very robust engagement, I won't lie. JP will tell you that some politicians love me and other politicians love me to leave the building. So I'll leave it to Councillor Lehloka to express his view. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone there. I hope everyone is fine. Yeah. Yeah, as the MM has been saying that, in fact, our role as the MPAC, in fact, is to investigate those annual reports, the financial statements, and all those other relevant narratives that we should look at. In fact, what is happening is that now, as an MPAC, we get this report. In fact, it goes to the FDB, and then the FDB, and then will deal with the report, and then after that, and then it will come to us, and from there we will review these reports, and if there is a necessity, and then we go and make the site visits. Or if there is a necessity, and then we will invite and then people, and then who will come and explain to us. As the MM has been saying that, I remember one time when we were summoning, can I use that word? Yeah. When we were summoning some of the officials here, there were some little bit of complaints, but they were not directed to me, that the MPAC is always calling us. And I remember we have discussed this with the MM, and then as to what procedure can we follow, and then when we invite people to come and make their own presentations there. Now, and after we have reviewed this thing, these UIFs and all these other reports, we will come with recommendations, and we always make follow-ups as to the corrective measures, whether they were done or not. And if they were not done, and then we will call that specific person, and then to come and account to us as to why this recommendation has not been done. One thing that we have realized as an MPAC with regard to our municipality is that the most important thing is that is to have this risk management committee. In fact, the first thing is to have the risk management policy. After we have that, and then it will guide us as to how are we going to manage these risks, and how are we going to mitigate these risks. Then we have your risk management committee, and then which will be aligned with your IDPs and your IDBPs. And as I've said that, and then we also ensure that we have that risk management policy. Now, we also have the performance and audit committee. And then this performance and audit committee also have the chief risk officer, of which now the reports are submitted to the ethics and the risk management committee, you know. And another important thing that we should realize is that now the key performance areas are very important, because those are the issues that will guide you as to what to do. And there must be some sort of an oversight, I want the better word for it, reviewing or monitoring, in fact, on a monthly basis, that you should look as to what risks are there, and then so that you can mitigate. And then when you meet on a short-term basis, for instance, as the officials, it's easy to detect the UIFs and all those other negative things that might implicate us. Now, another point is the issue of having the ethic. The ethics are very important because they will ensure that we have a leadership that is committed. If you have the leadership that is committed, it is obvious that now everything will go according to what it is supposed to be done. And another thing is that now the internal audits, as I have talked about them, they are also functioning well in our area here. And the issue of governance again is one thing that we should take into consideration, because most of the municipalities, they take the issue of governance, in fact, very simple, or maybe we should define it as to when you talk about the governance, we are talking about the involvement of the what committees there, you know, what committees forms part of the governance for instance, and whereby in our area here, in our municipality here, what committees form part of governance in which way. They also given an opportunity through their what committee meetings to come with the inputs, which those inputs go to the Speaker's office, and the Speaker's office will distribute them according to the Section 80 departments where those issues will be discussed. And the report will come back again, and then will go to the Speaker's office, and then it will go back to the what committee that is chaired by the what councillor. I think without any waste of time, I will just end up there, and then I will respond to their questions if maybe there might be some questions that I will be requested to respond on. And lastly, I think another important thing is that now when we talk about oversight, I think we municipalities should ensure that they understand who should make an oversight, because your Section 79, yes, they are doing an oversight, and we have your council also, which is doing an oversight again, and the communities themselves, they can form part of an oversight, but through public participation. You know, when the municipality ensures that there is public participation, it is easy for the community to have to be informed and to be able to comment and say, but here things are not going right. And there are many ways of coming up with public participation. It is through your IDPs, through your ward committees, when the executives meet with the different types of the forums. It might be your disability forum, your business forum, your women's forum, and so forth. Now, those issues of governance, they will also make sure that now us, as the municipality, we are put on our toes. So let me just pause there, and then we will respond to the questions when they arise. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Okay. No, thanks, and thanks, Chair. And just a couple of things on your submission. The issue of the support from the administration, because what you have alluded to, and I can tell you, in some of the municipalities, those departments in playing that role, I can tell you, it's not there. And the fact that even at a committee level, that type of support that is provided, because what we'd observe, and it's a countrywide, MPAC, on the basis of it having to investigate, at an administrative level, what often happens as officials, we then take a backseat to say, even on basic issues of discipline, managers don't get into that space because MPAC must investigate. So I think that those are the issues as you put on the table in terms of how Midvaal is tackling these issues. At an administrative level, the investigations that need to take place at that level, because nothing happens administratively, because there is this understanding that no, MPAC will investigate. Now, I always argue to say, we often say our councillors do not have the necessary capacity broadly. But again, you say they must conduct these complex, complicated investigations, thereby, as administrators, we then, I would say, just neglect to do what we are expected to do. So for me, that was a critical thing. And on how then we need to move, I think these are the conversations that we need not to stop them here because time won't be enough. Also linking to a question that came from Wayne earlier, in terms of the role of MPAC, there was one of his first comments. Whether is indeed time we then relook at the processing of the UIF&W and whether MPAC is still the relevant structure. Things have evolved. And I think Wayne, as the process starts in terms of reviewing the legislation, those are some of the areas that we will need to look at. If I get to my counterparts, specifically from the supporting institutions, I've got Melissa from Western Cape Provincial Treasury. As I've indicated, I've got Kgabo Moloto from Gauteng Treasury, and we've got Skhumbuzo from CoGTA. As I get to you, Mel, if you look at Skhumbuzo in the comments, and it's something that you touched on as well, from Riamokhetse, in terms of the documentation, whether I think it's more to Midvaal and probably George with a reference to a municipality, but I think that comment you touched on, has any municipality ever experienced the situation whereby there is no supporting documentation? When you come, I would like you to specifically deal with that comment and provide those insights. But then I'll allow you, and JP, also to reflect on that. But I think you've touched on that, to say, if your record keeping is not there, then you must forget about anything else. But it's a conversation that will take forward. Mel, welcome, and thanks for joining us this morning. I know as Provincial Treasurer in the Western Cape, you've done quite a lot, not only on the support, but also on the side of capacity building. It is therefore important to have, like people like you, just to share the experience of the Western Cape, how you have approached that type of support, the capacity building, to ensure that we've got these structures functional. As I said earlier, we are the ones who say our councillors do not have the necessary capacity. On the other hand, we are not doing enough to capacitate them for them to be able to deliver on their roles and responsibilities. What approach and strategies, in fact, I won't say what because I know they are in Western Cape. Just share with our audience the approach of the Western Cape Treasury, working with other stakeholders in actually closing this gap that we are grappling with.
Okay. Thank you, Zolani. It's good to see you once again on this platform. And good morning to all the attendees, councillors, and municipal managers. So just to introduce myself, my name is Melissa van Niekerk. I'm the Director for Financial Governance within Provincial Treasury. And one of my core areas of responsibility is to coordinate the governance approach for municipalities. With regards to the prevention and reduction of UIF&W, I'd like to, indicate that it is part of our governance approach. And that approach is really, I would say, slanted towards being proactive and preventative in terms of UIF&W. Also, with regards to the governance approach, it is an integrated approach. So we, our partners are Department of Local Government. It's also Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, and very importantly, the municipality. So as JP, indicated, he's our chairperson of our internal audit forum. So we work together in partnership with the municipalities to put in place to assist them to put in place an effective internal control system that actually prevents, detects and corrects, the internal control deficiencies that lead to UIF&W. I think also very importantly, just to reiterate what the MM of Midvaal said, the previous Swellendam MM was, that the governance structures really need to work together. And it's not about a duplication of effort, but it is more, with regards to how information is shared amongst these governance structures to address in a more proactive way, the internal control deficiencies. So just an example, if an investigation, comes to MPAC and MPAC specifically investigates to determine whether or not there is something should be, in terms of UIF&W, should it be written off or should it be recovered? They can also identify that there is negligence, and that can then be referred to the disciplinary board for further investigation. When they also make the recommendation, there should be also recommendations in terms of if internal control deficiencies should be corrected, and that should be fed, to the line function so that the internal control systems, can be amended and updated. So I think importantly is the proactive part, and when looking at the governance systems, it must enable service delivery. It must enable that, in terms of resources, it is used efficiently and effectively as possible. So when we have this approach, we begin to identify where the gaps and challenges are in a proactive manner, and that will also then inform the capacitation or support initiatives that are rendered to municipalities. And there are different target audiences. So, with regards to the line functions in terms of financial management, Provincial Treasury will take the lead on that. And we have a collaborative approach where it comes to the capacitation of MPAC. Our provincial CoGTA, which is Department of Local Government, will lead the training in terms of MPAC, but Provincial Treasury will take the ownership in terms of doing the relevant training with regards to financial management issues, the oversight issues that MPAC, needs to have oversight on, and also with regards to the processing of UIF&W. And then another important role player is, which I haven't mentioned, is Cllr as well. So I think importantly, it is to be proactive. It is for everybody to understand their respective roles and responsibilities in terms of mandate, and also, to respond to what the key challenges are or risks, as well as identifying root causes, in terms of addressing it. This is always an area as Provincial Treasury that we, want to focus on. There's a lot of factors that, and Zolani, you can guide me in terms of time, but there's a lot of factors, right, that contribute to UIF&W. It might be interpretation challenges in terms of legislation. It might be a capacitation and training issue as well. But it's important to understand what those, root causes are. And an area that we really want to focus on is, as I said, predominantly our focus has been proactive, preventative in terms of getting an effective internal control system in place. But we also want to look at, is MPAC effectively processing incidences of UIF&W? Does it feed through where necessary, does it feed through to the disciplinary board? And then also the feedback loop in terms of, correcting the internal control deficiencies which are within our control. So what we, in terms of information, the annual financial statements, audited annual financial statements, We can monitor that on an annual basis and see the progress. But we would want to move to the space where we begin to monitor in year. And in that way, also become more proactive, with regards to identifying transversal challenges and risks that need to be responded to that are identifying in here. So our viewpoint, right, is that yes, the AG identifies UIF&W, in terms of their audit process, but ideally, the UIF&W needs to be identified by the municipality itself, and it needs to be processed and referred to MPAC, and those corrective measures need to be, implemented in here. But it's
Okay.
okay.
No, sorry to cut you, Mel, but then I'll give you another chance because as you come in the next time, and thanks for these contributions. Specifically on the issue of the shared services, I know some time back there was an initiative, and it also addresses Anton and team, and also the comments that are coming through. We do not have, I'll say, enough capacity to service all municipalities. If we were to say every municipality must have a functional internal audit function with right skills and capacity, I think we can agree that it's not going to be possible. Now, it will be to share that Western Cape experience and how other provinces, and not only provincial treasuries, can draw from that experience. Because the issue of the internal audit function, your risk management, and Anton mentioned fraud investigations. For some municipalities that either cannot afford to have those resources, money-wise, or the skills, the pool is not that great. You share that experience for others to learn from that. And as I get to yourself as Skhumbuzo, I'll take you, Kgabo, shortly, as I indicated in terms of the question that came, because when you dealt with the issue of the records, I think you had quite a clear way of how KZN is dealing with that element. And maybe share with our audience and our panelists the strategy of KZN, where the records are not there, that should be there, and how it has assisted the province in reducing this UIF&W expenditure. Over to you, Skhumbuzo.
Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the panelists and the colleagues in attendance. No, basically, I think the introduction has already been made. I'm from CoGTA KZN, Municipal Finance. We are supporting municipalities on UIF&W, focusing mainly on MPAC. We provide trainings on MPAC and support in MPAC meetings, because I think our understanding is that training is part of capacity building. It's not an event, but a process. I think that we have, they say the proof, whatever the taste is in the proof is in the pudding. I think there's a saying that goes like that. From 2016, what we did, when we started to focus after local government elections, we started focusing on training MPAC. I think we have covered the entire province. I think we are the province with most municipalities in the country. There are about 54 now. I think previously there were 61. Now it's 54. So we covered all MPACs in the province, training them. I think what we've realized over the years is that training alone is not sufficient, can never be enough. Because you come there, you provide theory. You try to explain legislation. Legislation is law. People go to universities to study law. So I think the expectation from us as the government was not realistic, in the sense that when we provided training to councillors, they must know what to do after we have left. But now I think the focus now is mainly on supporting them in MPAC meetings on case-by-case basis. When you are sitting with the issues that are relevant to your municipalities, I think what we have acknowledged is that it makes more sense to them when you assist them in terms of the issues they are grappling with in the municipality. Now, the question about the lack of documentation. How do you deal with that? I think at the moment, I believe that it's throughout the country. I would like to believe that most institutions, especially in the local government, they are sitting with old UIF&Ws, whereby that were never addressed by the previous councils. Now there are no documents. They don't know what to do with those cases, because the legislation requires that Section 32 says only after investigation by a council committee. Now the question is, can you conduct an investigation without proper documentation? I think you need to understand the word, the investigation itself. It involves physical evidence. The moment you don't have physical evidence, there's no investigation that can take place. Even if you can open a criminal case with the police, it will become a cold case. I think that is the approach now that you are focusing on, is that now let's go back to all those cases from 2010, 2012, all those things. We are saying now, let's go back there. Let's embark on a process whereby we leave no stone unturned in so far as trying to obtain the information using all sources that are available. When, for example, let's say you've got the schedules, but you don't have the supporting documents. When there's a company, ABC Traders, try to track that company if it's still in existence. You write to that company, you are saying, on this year, you had a contract with the municipality, or you provided goods and services to this municipality. Kindly avail any document that you might still have in your possession, knowing very well that even the companies, in terms of the Tax Act, they only have an obligation to keep information for 5 years. So all those things. So I think what the reason we are taking that approach is to now, if we write a report, to be comprehensive as possible, insofar as leaving no loopholes for the AG, so that when we submit a report saying these transactions happened in 2012 and the councils have since been replaced, I think there have been 3 elections after that, if I'm not mistaken. Now we are sitting with the current council. What should they do? Because now it's part of their oversight as the council. They need to execute their duties. But here is an elephant in the room. They've got these sins that have been inherited from their predecessors. We need to find a way forward. So when we then write the reports there, we make sure that we tick all the boxes insofar as trying to get the documentation. And when there's a response, it should be documented. We don't have that response anymore. If that company has responded, we no longer have that information. Then we're gonna say, anyway, in terms of Income Tax Act, they only had to keep that information for 5 years anyway. Then the Archives Act as well, all those things. I think in some of the cases we have done, we even look at the Archives Act, whereby it's places an obligation on institutions to say how long the information should be kept, all those things. We even look at case law now. We even graduated to even looking at case laws, cases that have been decided by the courts insofar as investigations are concerned, all those things. So that is the only way that we can get out of this quagmire as the municipalities. Let's be thorough in what we do. Let's write the report as comprehensive as possible so that you don't leave loopholes for the AG to come maybe and set the reports aside. I would say that I think we are succeeding on that one. In the municipalities that we have assisted thus far, we are succeeding, because in the main, it should be whatever the AG wants. They just want some chronology that they would look at when they audit. What steps have you taken? What limitations do you have or are imposed by various legislations on you in order to execute your task? I think in the main, that is what we are dealing with right now. And again, I think it is
okay, As you wrap up school, probably I think the conversation says we must constantly have these engagements. Probably as you wrap up, because I think you've touched on the critical components of how you are dealing specifically the issue of documentation of KZN. Probably can just wrap up your submission, and then I will allow Kgabo to come in.
Yes. As a parting shot, I was going to say maybe, I think fortunately we do have Wayne here from National Treasury. They are the ones who issue circulars and regulations. I think maybe as a parting shot is that I think we need to properly define the word investigation in the context of MPAC, because investigation they may take different forms. Some investigation they need to be forensic in nature, some they need to be an inquiry, all those things. I think maybe under definitions, when we talk of MPAC, I think when we review we review the legislation, we need maybe to define that, because I think one speaker has just said some municipalities, they don't, I think it's two, Chair. You said they just say they cannot implement consequent management because they are waiting for the MPAC to investigate. But you always say there's nothing in MPAC that is going to investigate, because even their investigation in nature, they are not based on trying to find out who is liable for non-compliance legislation, but they are focused on recoverability, whether or not the expenditure should be written off or should be recovered. So to say you are waiting for MPAC to investigate, you cannot take actions, I think you are just hiding behind maybe the thumb. Okay, thank you, Chair.
No, thanks a lot. I'll give you now, Kgabo, because I see you just also returned something, maybe as an addition, but the conversations, Wayne, and I think it's something that we spoke about specifically around the review of the legislations and the guiding frameworks, the issue of these definitions, because I'm even tempted to say we probably need a specific session where we will look at what are the definitions, what do they mean, and how do we even relook at them. And I think it came through from the previous speakers that you talk of irregular expenditure and people already think about wrongdoing, fraud, corruption, which in actual sense, services and goods could have been delivered through the pricing that has been provided. It's just that the process getting to that was not right. Services delivered, customers are happy, but it is still classified as irregular expenditure. But I think as part of the review, these are some of the areas that we need to look at. But as I've indicated, in terms of also this platform, we need to have this more, because even today, the part of the disciplinary board, we haven't touched much on, and it's okay, we will have follow-up sessions. But as you come in, Kgabo, I see you just made a comment specifically, or it was Nari, not Kgabo, in support of the word investigation. From the side of Gauteng Treasury, and again, probably focusing more on the collaborations, because it is clear that it's through collaborations in supporting our municipalities that we will be able to win this fight. Just briefly share the experience of Gauteng, and then thereafter I've got two panelists who will then, based on what has been presented this morning, what are their learnings, because I brought them into this panel just for them to have that experience of what's happening in other parts of the country, and then also juxtapose that with their experiences in their municipalities. That will be Councillor Mbele, and then that will be Opelo, who is the MPAC researcher. Kgabo, let me hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues, panelists, and other participants on this platform. Maybe let me start by saying thank you for inviting us on this good session. I think we are gaining a lot as well from our side as Gauteng. But my name, like you said, is Moloto, Gauteng Provincial Treasury. amongst my responsibility, we also deal in supporting DC boards and MPAC to the certain extent, even though most of the MPAC work, like my colleague from Western Cape has alluded, is being performed by CoGTA. Chair, I just want to touch on a few things, especially regarding the relationship between DC boards and MPAC, because I see on the chat there was a question from Ravin who was asking if the role of MPAC and DC board does not duplicate the efforts, and also there was, I think, Spindilo who was asking who does UIF&W investigation, is it MPAC or DC boards? And in doing our job as provincial treasurer, one of the major things that we have seen that has make progress of implementing consequence management is that how even council resolutions are drafted, or council recommendation, especially by MPAC when dealing with UIF&W. I think it's one of the causes that we have seen that is causing stagnation in the processing of this UIF&W expenditure. Why I'm talking about the resolution, we have seen that the roles of MPAC and DC board are often misunderstood, because we have to go back on understanding in the system what is the role of the DC boards, and also what is the role of MPAC when UIF&W expenditure has been incurred. And I think to make it upfront to those two colleagues who were asking the question, I think is quite clear, and we have normally when we receive when we are doing we will ask municipalities, especially MPACs, to share with us the reports that they want to table to council before they are tabled. And colleagues would bear with me. Will share the same sentiment that normally the recommendations that we will see on those reports, you will find recommendation like financial disciplinary board should investigate UIF&W expenditure, or you'll find the UIF&W expenditure should be condoned by council. Others will use the word regularization of the expenditure. But if you can check in terms of Section 32, what is required of MPAC, you'd see that those recommendations or resolutions by MPAC are not consistent with the framework. There's no way disciplinary board can investigate expenditure related to UIF&W, but the DC board has to, if there's UIF&W, has to investigate that act that led to UIF&W, just to bring a consequence management. And we have seen within our sector, I think when normally we go through the two case studies, the Mamusa and Metsimaholo case studies, they just give or reiterate on the framework that financial misconduct regulations had brought into the system, where if any, and I think even the MM of Midvaal made reference to that, any charges of financial misconduct in nature, if they don't follow the frameworks, the time frame, they don't follow the preliminary investigation, the full investigation that are prescribed in financial misconduct regulations, those cases normally don't stand the test of time in courts. And we have to note it at that level, that financial DC boards, they mostly investigate and make the determination if there is an act of financial misconduct. They don't deal with the expenditure that has been that has been occurred, because that's the responsibility of council as as part of their executive function, because they cannot delegate, like passing budgets, they cannot delegate that. That's why even when there's a financial UIF&W, they have to make a determination. The issue of whether MPAC is a rest structure to investigate such expenditures.
Kgabo, I think let's probably hold it there for a moment. I think that there might be a burning issue from Anton from Midvaal. But then, as I said earlier, these are the conversations that will be continuing, because I still want to give each panelist the last bite. But as I indicated, I've got those two panelists who will just, out of the session today, their take-home type of experience. What are the things that they can immediately implement as they get back to their spaces? Let me give you an opportunity, Anton, and then I'll come to you, JP, because there was a specific question earlier about George specifically on the internal control environment. Anton?
All right, thanks, Zolani. Yeah, just I'm a little bit concerned that we are still stuck at who does what and what their roles are. To me, it's always been clear, if the matter is brought to the attention of the internal auditor, whether it's through the fraud hotline or through whatever mechanism, receives the complaint or the allegation, there's the first preliminary investigation. And I'm also a little bit concerned that there seems to be a need for the definition of what the investigation should entail. I think the regulations as well as the law is quite clear on the different types of investigation, right? So let me just run through that very quickly. So the matter is reported, it comes into AI, internal audit makes a determination, the matter is reported to the accounting officer. Depending on the materiality, I either have 7 days to inform council or at the next council meeting to advise that there's a matter that needs to be investigated. MPAC is the first port of call. If there is any concern around whether an individual is implicated, and I want to support my colleague from Provincial Gauteng, if there is an implication of an individual or individuals who may or may not have had a hand in orchestrating the transaction, it then must go to the FDB. And the FDB's responsibility, as he rightly points out, is to establish with reasonable means, and I want to say we make use of forensic investigators, we also make use of and I've forgotten the word, people who do the assessments as to whether someone is being truthful in the investigation. I'm forgetting the word for some reason. People are then interviewed and established whether that person has been truthful in their responses or not. The FDB then makes a recommendation back to the AO to say, Anton is guilty, JP is not guilty. Here is the documentary proof to do so. And the report goes back to MPAC to say, let's say it's R1 million transaction, 500,000 is fair value because the audit function has to establish whether a good was received, whether it was overpaid, whether it was overcharged. 500,000 is recoverable. JP is not guilty, Anton is guilty. Please instruct the MM. Now, this is where it gets interesting, Chairperson. Both MPAC and FDB, in my experience, has shown an appetite for understanding what does the AO do after the matter is reported to him. So they want to see through the institution whether disciplinary action is taken. And this is where we hit an interesting snag. Only the MM and the SMs are subjected to the public disciplinary processes. Staff from director level or those who are not form part of section 56, 57 appointees are subjected to the collective bargaining agreement disciplinary processes. And that's not part of the public domain. And this is where I have gone like, no, colleagues, you've given me the responsibility as the accounting officer. I must now apply my mind whether the investigation, and this is where the issue of investigation becomes critical, whether the threshold of the investigation meets disciplinary processes. And that is where I am discovering more often than not that the quality of the investigation creates a cloud of doubt, but not absolute proof of malfeasance or misconduct or financial mismanagement. And this is where, I mean, there are at least 2 instances on my table at the moment where I'm saying there is not sufficient, that the investigation, even a forensic investigation, was not adequate in passing the threshold. And this is why I'm saying to Wayne and others in National Treasury, Section 32 does not prescribe thresholds. The thresholds for disciplinary action are much clearer in the collective bargaining agreement between SALGA and local authorities, where, you know, assault and misconduct and those things are very clearly defined. In the case of financial misconduct, and in the case of the investigations and what they yield, simply creates a cloud of doubt. There isn't the veritable picture of Anton with his hand in the cookie jar. You know, like I've dismissed staff for theft of diesel, where there's literally somebody with a picture of somebody siphoning diesel out of a municipal vehicle. It's clear, it's uncontested, you know. So in that instance, the collective bargaining agreement on disciplinary matters for people other than the senior management and municipal management is a lot clearer, because the thresholds are set out in the collective bargaining. Those thresholds are not the same, and they're not as clear in financial investigations and even forensic investigations. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot, Anton, for that. And I note your comment, Sipindile, that yes, we are here for those clarifications. But also, again, it was for that reason to say we probably need to have a specific session on these clarifications, because as Anton is saying, they are there. It's not like we are talking about something that is non-existent. It's how then do we begin to bring them to the fore so that we are all on the same level of understanding. We know where to get these resources, because that's another challenge. We might see it probably as the panelists, we know where to go to get what, but the broader audience, they don't have that liberty. We will be probably getting towards our closing, which is the case, but I'll still allow each panelist for closing remarks, but specifically for Mel, the issue of the shared services, it's something that you need, as you sum up and close, just share on how the Western Cape has dealt with that, and also on your side, JP, the experience of Joe specifically, because if the internal control environment, I think every one of you, starting with you, and even the MPAC chair has touched on that. There are those basic things that if they are non-existent, you are bound to have these problems. We'll need to touch on that. But as we get to that segment of our conversation, I want to allow Councillor Mbele to come in from the city of Matlosana. Just for yourself, Councillor, to share with both the panelists and the audience your learnings from this particular session. We have had conversations prior today in terms of your operations as well. How will this information assist you as you are going back also to interact with other MPAC members within your own municipality? Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zonyane, for inviting me into this very fruitful, productive session on UIF&W. Safe to say, most of the panelists have covered quite a lot of points that I think they are very progressive in terms of assisting to reduce the UIF&W. I don't have so much to say to suggest or propose 2 or 3 points that maybe if they can also be taken into consideration, which I believe and feel that can also contribute or help towards that. I believe if we can introduce, I know municipalities have got their whistleblower protection policies. If that can be enforced across maybe, yes, if that can be enforced as well, whistleblower policies in the runnings of the oversight committees, and the community members should be made aware of such an important exercise of blowing a whistle. I think that can also discourage people who have taken that as a culture onto themselves to commit financial misconduct. The second one I thought maybe might also assist will be to segregate duties. It should not be a question of a CFO who is only tasked with a responsibility of dealing or having control over all aspects of financial transactions. Maybe there should be a committee of some nature that would also take stock of whatever financial transactions before maybe they are submitted over to the AG, Auditor General. I believe that committee can also assist us in terms of ensuring that there are no transgressions to compliance and then there are no commitment of financial misconduct cases. I've realized that with the experience of my municipality, there's no transparency and disclosure in terms of reporting on monthly to council of the financial transactions that has been carried out. If that can also be made a rule that cuts across all municipalities. I was also noting, as other panelists were presenting, that maybe if it can be a rule that we develop, because I've realized that with the experience in my municipality, we don't have a plan of action, a schedule of plan of action of MPAC. So if we can have a uniform, consistent schedule of a plan of action across the country throughout, which cuts across to all Section 79 committees, so that we follow it hard and fast, all of us. And then it would be easier for intervention strategies, maybe by CoGTA, and other maybe officials who from the Provincial Treasury to assist those MPACs which are lagging behind in terms of the schedule. I think that schedule would also assist, which will be applicable to all MPACs across the country. And then I was also listening when the
Councillor, as you wrap up, so that we can quickly move towards the closing, but all the insights and observations that we provided are noted. But perhaps if you can wrap up, because I need to give our panelists just their closing remarks. But again, for me, the fact that we've drawn something from the session, that's what we advocate for, that these sessions must serve exactly that.
Yes, in conclusion, I would also put this question to the panel. How do we discourage a collusion that exists between political and administrative leadership? Because that too might have a hand in terms of escalating UIF&W. And lastly, I wonder if it has crossed our minds that did we ever think that MPAC members, whether do they find joy or are committed in dealing with these cases? Why can't the upper limit of MPAC members be equal to those of MPAC chairs? Because it's not the MPAC chairs only that do the lion's share of the work, but members too, they do that. In some instances, you might find that some members of MPAC are more capable than their chairs. But when you look at their upper limit, but it does not motivate, it does not really give stimulus in terms of encouraging and motivating them to do their oversight work. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thanks very much for that one. And I'm even tempted, Opelo, to probably for this round, sit you out. At least you were also in our previous webinar as well. But again, I know you might have drawn some experiences from this conversation. And as Wayne is saying, and it's something that I think we will all agree, that it will not end today. It started in June, as I've indicated, but because of the demand, we then pushed for part 2. It therefore means we need to have a continuation to these conversations, focusing specifically on this item because it's a big item. and it doesn't seem that everybody is getting grasp on how specifically to deal with it. JP, my brother, as you wind up, there's quite a lot that has come through, but then that could also be part of your parting shot, and thanks once more.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jay. It's very insightful to be here, and I think it's an excellent platform to discuss these burning issues facing local government. But I think it's as you alluded to, we can't have a broad sense like talking about UIF&W. We need to compartmentalize these issues, and I think we need to have honest and candid decisions about what does what mean. We can't be jumping around in a part 3. If there's a part 3, hopefully there's part 3. Then we need to drill down to specific either definitions, either what it means. In any case, you can't. For me, my closing remarks is I think prevention is better than cure. So for me, I would actually want to say to go back to the basics. There are certain controls, easy controls. You get preventative, detective, corrective controls, and I think record keeping is your friend. The supporting documentations. Applying due consideration, making decisions. And I know someone said that we can't, the AG comes say you didn't apply your mind. I don't know. I remember Groenewald always had that. He says, how can you tell me I didn't apply my mind and stuff like that? What's it about documentation? But in short, to answer the questions, but what are examples also has, I think we have strong and effective leadership, both at the political administrative level. We have competent staff in place. All our policies, procedures are in place, but as Em also said that it can be placed, but so what? It needs to be reviewed annually. People need to sign for it. They need to understand what's in the policy. Their roles should be understand in policy as well. I think automation of processes should be key on our radars, Chair. These manual interventions is where maybe there's loopholes. So I think automation is something that we should start exploring. Also looking at the previous audit report, implementing that audit action plan so we can ensure that we keep it. But again, for me, it's maintain proper record keeping to ensure complete, accurate, and relevant information set when we investigate, when we report, when we do anything. When it's hard copy, not preferably, but maybe electronic part of it. But at least there is some sort of backup. There's enough support. We have cloud, you have servers, you have a lot of issues. I know funding is maybe issues for some municipalities, but there must be some kind of mean way which can be assisted. And then there's your daily stuff, control over your daily and monthly processing, recons to be in place, segregation of duties and regular reporting checks. From my side, I think let's go back to the basic, and record keeping is one of the key areas. Thank you, panelists. It's been a pleasure.
No, thanks a lot, JP. MM and MPAC, let me hand over to you. Also just touching on some of the critical aspects that have come through, but what is coming out strongly as well. This is perhaps a conversation focusing on this topic that we need to keep going because in every webinar, there is always a learning that someone can take specifically for implementation. Over to you, MM.
Thanks very much. It's hard to conclude on a matter when there are so many issues that remain unsaid, but be that as it may, I think, Midvaal is an island of excellence based on all of these actions that we've taken, 10 clean audits in a row, one of a handful of municipalities in the country to have achieved this extraordinary outcome. I'm happy to participate in any future discussion. I think maybe my one advice to treasuries and CoGTAs is maybe to introduce a maturity model for assessing where municipalities are. We do maturity models on risk, we do maturity models on financial capacity. Maybe we should look at a maturity model on whether MPAC and oversight, or whether it's a corporate governance model, gives municipalities an understanding of where they are at. Secondly, I think the kinds of support that are necessary, I've been tracking the comments. I mean, I feel for municipalities in the Northern Cape where the distances between municipalities are hundreds of kilometers, not as it is here in Gauteng. If I drive 5 kilometers, I go through 3 municipalities in Gauteng, where proximity is an issue. And maybe this is where provincial CoGTAs and provincial treasury should provide the shared services if it's not possible. I'm mindful that I'm sitting in an institution that is financially liquid, that's got 3 years in a row the most financially sustainable municipality. Our cash is properly managed. We collect in excess of 90%. So I'm mindful that we're sitting on a very different circumstance, and that's and that we probably are the pinnacle, the few of us that are present here today, of where other municipalities should strive for, and what should we do to assist and support them. I'm happy to engage in future conversations to show how these building blocks were put in place to achieve the kind of corporate governance system that's in place. Just interestingly, we spend 6.5 million on our internal audit function, which includes financial disciplinary board and investigations. So it's not a small amount of money. That includes staff and outsourcing costs. The third point, Zolani, from my side is just, it all starts with the quality of the individuals that you appoint. And I know in an area like Gauteng, it's easier to identify capacity. We've had just over 60 applications for our senior internal auditor post. And so I can understand the difference that makes to institutions that barely are able to find interns, is what I saw on the earlier comments. We're prepared to participate. We're prepared to make available our resources to share this. I have said repeatedly on a number of national and local conferences, it cannot be that we are the only island of success north of the Western Cape. I have a moral responsibility to provide support to all of my colleagues. Up until recently, I co-chaired the Provincial Audit Steering Committee to share our successes and our processes. But I can tell you, it is not easy. It is a deep ingrained commitment and will to do things the manner in which they should be done. We're all governed by the same regulations. It's the enthusiasm with which we embrace and implement them, I think, that separates those who are struggling with those who are succeeding. Let me hand over to Councillor Lehloka.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I think from my side, the parting shot will be that, it is basic that we need to develop those policies. And after developing those policies, and then we need to implement them. Because some of these challenges you can see here, it is just because of the non-compliance with their policies, And number two is that I think municipalities need to employ qualified people and people who are competent, because one might be qualified but not being competent, And another thing which I've realized with Midvaal here, we don't sit a long time, we don't rather wait a long time with vacancies that are not occupied, because that leaves a gap. If there is a vacancy, follow the right processes, employ people. And the issue of time frame again, because when you talk about time frame, let me just give an example with the processes of the annual reports, when they should go to the AG and then going to the MPAC, going to the councils and all those other things. I need, if people should be time conscious, for me, this is a chain, if one entity within the municipality miss its time, then automatically the whole municipality now it won't function. And the issue of time frames and all those other things. When is the report supposed to go to the council on a certain period? Let it go there on that particular period, And in terms of the oversight, councillors should attend their Section 80 committees or Section 79 committees, more importantly, the council meetings, because that's where the oversight is also done there, Lastly, I think, the second last now, it is the issue of training. Some of the reports, when we investigate, when we scrutinize, you will see that now one of the remedies might be that let those particular people be trained on that particular, whether it is an irregular expenditure or whatever fault which was made. Let there be enough time to train the what you call staff there. And lastly, Chairperson, I think, I don't know with some other municipalities whether the MPAC chairperson it is full-time. You know the work that is done by the MPAC, it's a very, very, very huge task. And it needs people who are skilled there within that MPAC committee there. Now, you will find that now when we get the annual report, from the time that we need to scrutinize this report up to the time that it has to go to the, the council, we don't have enough time to scrutinize this report. We end up sharing those tasks there, maybe by saying that from chapter 1, for an example, from page 1 to page 50, and Councillor so will look into that matter. And then from page 51 up to page 60, so will look into that matter. You will see now that you will find that now each councillor didn't scrutinize the whole document. Now, when we see it, the part that you didn't scrutinize, to you, it's like it is a new thing now. When we sit in the MPAC meeting, Now, the issue of time frame and the issue of ensuring that maybe we should, I don't know whether can we propose that the MPAC chairperson maybe, or whether the MPAC should be a full-time like your section 80. And the issue of the resources again should be looked at also. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. No, thanks a lot for that, Chair. And I think it also feeds into this conversation I was saying it must take place on how do we look at some of these issues, because when we set up local government way back in 1998, the realities of today are not there. And we need now to start taking stock and try to build structures, as you say. And I think I'm already in the chat. There's someone who has already taken your offer in terms of really reaching out, because I always say, when we've got municipalities like Midvaal, for an example, let's assume you are in Limpopo or Northwest, you don't have to go to the Western Cape or internationally for those best practices. Let's learn to really promote that culture, and I see that that is happening. Mel, briefly, as you are parting, after Mel, you'll come Kgabo and then Skhumbuzo.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zolani, and also thank you for arranging this discussion. It's very valuable in terms of insights, and also agreeing that there are further discussions that obviously need to, take place. I think starting off with the shared services. So shared services is definitely a logical response, right, to municipalities that have got capacity constraints. And within the Western Cape, we have, implemented successfully within the risk management function. But with regards to disciplinary boards in terms of financial misconduct regulations, that is still an area that we are currently working on. And we definitely agree that it is a solution, right, in terms of where there is limited capacity. There's different factors, obviously, that contribute to the success, and also different models that need to be considered. So we'll definitely keep you updated, with regards to how we progress. I'm going to be short because I agree with all the previous panelists. From my side, really, advocating a two-pronged approach, proactive, in terms of strengthening your internal control environment, and then also processing incidences of UIF&W, but importantly, feeding off the learnings from those structures, and ensuring that there is continuous improvement with regards to internal control environments. I want to also just raise awareness with regards to, I know you've probably covered it, but with regards to National Treasury's reduction strategy, it aligns to that proactive as well as processing the incidences of UIF&W, and just indicating JP in terms of his presentation has actually illustrated how George Municipality has practically implemented, this strategy. I also just want to, indicate that this is a collective effort. We all have a role to play. And I think for those municipalities that are struggling, it is to reach out, as you said, to your municipalities within your area that are doing well, but also your provincial treasuries, as well as provincial CoGTAs and national treasury as well. We all have a collective goal. Thank you, Zolani.
Thank you, Zolani. I think my part in short would be also, I think I agree with most of the sentiments shared by fellow panelists, but maybe to just also re-emphasize on the fact from the first presentation when my colleague was saying the internal audit unit at George, they do reviews and on UIF&W. I think I want most municipality can align to that, because even Midvaal, if you can check their cases that they submit, the reviews that they did on and the investigation that they did on UIF&W and the functionality of DC boards, they mostly rely on the work that has been done by internal auditors. So it is important for municipality just to also to consider in their institutional arrangement or terms of reference for MPAC in making them effective on how to use other governance structures that are at their disposal. And also, maybe I know we cannot put more pressure on internal audit units to make MPAC function. But I think the effectiveness of the internal audit also lies on the capacity that as municipality we invest in them, I think. But if we can also invest more in internal audits just to assist these other governance structures with technical skills, so that at least investigations are processed and other consequence management measures are taken, I think that would assist a lot as well. Thank you very much, colleagues.
No, thanks a lot, Kgabo. Skhu, you can come in with your closing remarks.
Thank you. No, I think for me, let's first appreciate this platform created to share views and ideas. Let's hope that maybe we're gonna take it forward to benefit a whole lot more. Even those who are not here, maybe let's hope that the word is gonna spread so that we have more people in future. No, my parting shot is that I think the take home, I think for most people here should be that the issue of MPAC should not maybe be taken lightly in terms of the job that is required from them. And again, I think as long as we understand what they have to do and we support them, because another thing which has not been addressed here is the support to MPAC members. I think the support is lacking in most municipalities. They just expect them to swim on their own. They are not supported by the administration. The experience that we have is that those municipalities that have allocated the resources for MPAC or to MPAC, they are turning the tide. They are able to deal with a lot of cases. Okay. Then the issue of investigation as well. I'm not gonna be, I think, be sounding like a scratch record there. I think we need to define that. We need to be clear in terms of the wording that we use, and it should be understood by all, from the administration and the politicians as well. Thank you, Chair.
No, thanks a lot, colleagues. Firstly, to all my panelists, thanks, JP, for just setting the scene. MM and MPAC Chair for your invaluable inputs. And as I'm sitting here, probably in one of the sessions, we just need to zoom into Midvaal so that we can have that in depth, because there is a lot that we can still learn. Yes, you scratched the surface this morning, but again, because of time limitations, but we need that focused approach so that the audience can have the benefit of the value chain. Thanks for that. Thanks for your inputs and insights. Mel, thanks a lot from Western Cape Treasury. It was also great that you were available this time around, because I know the previous webinar you couldn't make it for various reasons. Kgabo, I believe we will have a lot of these sessions, as I've indicated. On the DPs, we scratched the surface, and perhaps that should be a conversation on its own. Even on MPAC, we still have gaps, which I believe, as we continue to engage, we need to work towards closing those gaps. School, my brother, thanks a lot for making it again. And even your proposal says, let's have a lot of these sessions, let's empower more, because of you who have spoken this morning up to now, it was more to say, how do you then begin to share your own experiences? How are you making it work? And there's still a room and scope to do that even more. Councillor Mbele, thanks for your inputs, very much appreciated. And again, you've raised quite pertinent issues that we have not even touched on the issue of even Councillor, the MPAC chair from Midvaal, on the role and responsibilities of the MPACs, and how do we rethink, as the chair was raising, making the members full-time. And again, looking at what the MPAC must do, you are the ones who must guide those conversations, because you understand the challenges that we are faced with, and how best can we remodel the functioning of MPAC. Those insights are much appreciated. Opelo, definitely next time, you will have an opportunity also to make your invaluable insights. But as I've indicated, you were part and parcel of part one. You made quite great contributions. But as you come next time, also bring a lot of those MPAC researchers, because they've got a role to play in supporting MPAC in the work that they do. To our audience, you've been great as always. In as much as we might not have gotten to all the questions, all the comments, but the responses in the conversation itself did touch on how best we can respond to those issues. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, thank you for your time, and thank you for your contributions in building our country. Definitely, we will see each other again in future. Have a lovely afternoon.